You are looking at the entrance to one of the most famous, if not the most interesting, burial sites in the United States of America. I am in Boston, Massachusetts, and I am stepping into the Granary burying ground. And this is perhaps one of the more interesting tourist destinations that you'll find, or tourist attractions rather, that you'll find here in Boston. And it's a beautiful autumn day. It's a perfect day to just kind of take a nice walk through the burying ground. That's what they call it in the guidebook. They call it a burying ground, not a cemetery. So I'm just going to kind of do a slow walk through the cemetery, and in doing so I'll read to you from the guidebook. It says, in this 2-acre plot are the remains of more famous people than any other small graveyard in America. Within its bounds lie buried 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 9 governors of Massachusetts, the 5 victims of the Boston Massacre, Benjamin Franklin's parents, and yes, Paul Revere. Even a mother goose is interned in the Granary. This is the city's 3rd oldest burying place, first used in 1660. It was originally part of the Common, and its name derives from the old grain warehouse that once stood next door on the site of the Park Street Church, which you would see right there. That would be the Park Street Church. Before you enter the graveyard, pause on the sidewalk near the church and look through the fence. Here a boulder commemorates James Otis, whose 1761 speech against the rights of assistance was the birth of the child of independence. Otis was the Patriot spiritual leader until he was clubbed over the head by a British officer in a barroom brawl. Then he rapidly lost his sanity and became more of an embarrassment than a hero. So this here would be the boulder commemorating James Otis. It goes on to say that in the exact center of the graveyard is the Franklin Cenotaph, marking the grave of Benjamin's parents, Josiah and Abiah. Benjamin is buried in Philadelphia, where he lived most of his adult life. The stone obelisk was erected by a group of citizens in 1827. We'll go over and take a look at that shortly. To replace an earlier marker. The laudatory inscription is from the pen of their youngest son, none other than Ben Franklin himself. Really is an interesting place to find oneself. You can see, I don't know if you can see the inscriptions on these. Perhaps you can see that. 1738, October 1738. As you look around the burial ground, you'll see 3 types of graves. Most common are the ones marked by a headstone, and sometimes also by a footstone. As these stones have been rearranged several times over the years, today they bear little relation to the bodies actually buried beneath them. Table tombs look just like their name. No one's actually buried above the ground. The tables are just permanent markers for the brick-encased tombs below. There's a table tomb up ahead. Actually, one over here off to the left. Markers for these are usually flush in the ground or attached to a nearby wall or fence. Vaults and table tombs were preferred by wealthy families, since they were more secure and could actually be owned by a family. Each tomb usually has several people buried in it, even though there may be only one name on the tombstone. And it says that beside a nearby building, a tall white pillar marks the tomb of John Hancock. This stone shaft is a replacement. The original tombstone disappeared over a century ago. It has been suggested that Hancock's remains may have been lifted by a grave robber as the tomb lay open for some time while a nearby wall was being rebuilt. So here would be the It goes on to read that during the Revolution, local loyalists fled to Canada and abandoned their slaves here, while slaves of Patriot owners often earned freedom by fighting in the war. By 1783, there were so few slaves left in Massachusetts that slavery was abolished, the first state in the Union to do that. In the left rear corner of the graveyard, near an office building, is the table tomb of Peter Faneuil. This would be the table tomb of Peter Faneuil. I was just at Faneuil Hall yesterday. He was a benefactor of Boston's Market and Town Meeting Hall. Faneuil was of French Huguenot Protestant descent, and his name was as difficult for 18th century Bostonians to pronounce it as it is for us today. When he died, the stonecutter carved his name on the tombstone by the way it was pronounced. P. Funeral. You can see this or not. That actually says Jeremy Grudley on it. Here lies the body of M. Nathaniel Shannon, aged 68 years old, died in 1723. He was born in 1655, settled in Boston in 1687, was a naval officer. Somewhere in here is the birthplace of Paul Revere. And this would be the tomb that I was just referring to here. You can see how they spelt it. Peter Faneuil. As you walk through the various tourist destinations of Boston, there's tours such as the one you see up here, and the tour guides are often dressed in clothing representative of that which you would see back in the day. So this woman is doing the
here in front of you. All right. You're good? All right. So, buried somewhere under here, because there are two markers, as you may note. This smaller one on the right, it says Revere's tomb. That's an earlier one. And then this white rectangle, this big opulent one, or it's nice, it's not opulent. Very nice one. This we added in later on. When this man got famous again, we wanted to give him something a little bit nicer. Buried under here is my favorite, Paul Revere. Oh, I'm sorry. So this is actually a private tour.
Ooh,
sorry.
Hey. Private tour.
Yeah,
all right.
Sorry. Paul.
I can't film
Think
a
about who
private
we have
tour.
so far. We have Sam. Sam is the ideas guy, the brain, the voice, the face, the mouthpiece of the American Revolution. And we'll talk about John Hancock in a second. He's the richest guy, so he's the wallet of the Revolution, the wallet. What we
You
need
can
now
actually take
is the boots on the ground,
can take a
community
tour
organizer,
here.
endless energy volunteer
And that would be
who
the
at any moment will hop on a
gravesite of
horse
Paul
and
Revere.
go off to Philadelphia to deliver
One
a
if
message.
by sea, two
That
if by
is
land.
this guy. That's Paul Revere. Okay? And we'll be seeing his house later on. So we'll talk about him in detail later. But the
I'm always getting myself in trouble. I once heard it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. I'm reading from this. It says, around you are some of the earliest burials at the cemetery. The oldest stone, dated 1667, marked the burial of John Wakefield. Apparently, a frugal relative 36 years later had the back of the stone carved for Anne Child, whose daughter married a Wakefield. The nearby footstone carries both names. I'm going to actually invert the camera here, give you a nice view. Somewhere up here is a woman that's buried, and it's Mother Goose. It says, turn right at the next path, walk back towards the Franklin Monument. As you near the first tree on your left, turn onto the second dead-end path. And here is buried Mother Goose. So somewhere in here is Mother Goose, and I would probably beg to argue that she's probably right over here. I see a dead-end path. Elizabeth Goose, who died in 1757, was the second wife of Isaac Goose. She raised 20 children, 10 on her own, or 10 of her own, and 10 by Isaac's first wife. When Isaac died, Elizabeth moved in with her daughter and 14 grandchildren, where she lived to the age of 92. So here you see, there is the there's the tomb. It says, there the facts end, but we can assume that, like any good grandmother, Elizabeth Goose spent many an hour reciting nursery rhymes to the little ones gathered around the fire. Legend has it that her son-in-law, a printer, published a book of these stories titled Songs for the Nursery, or Mother Goose's Melodies. The legend remains unproven, for no copies of the book have ever been found. Regrettably, we must acknowledge that Elizabeth was not the original Mother Goose. There were others before her in England and in France, and most of the Mother Goose tales go back years before Elizabeth Goose's day.
So I'll show you up here a couple of graves with a skull and crossbones.
So there you see it. Here lies the body of Mary Goose, wife to Isaac Goose, aged 49 years. And this would be the Franklin Monument. Here lies buried the body of Mr. Hannah Franklin, wife to Samuel Franklin. So this would be where Ben Franklin's parents are buried. It's amazing to walk through such history as this. And then another grave that's of some significant interest is right up ahead. That would be Sam Adams, the one and only Sam Adams. And it goes on to say, the stone that marks the tomb of Samuel Adams, the organizer of the Revolution. It is often said that it was Hancock's money and Adams' brains that fueled the revolt. Adams' fiery writings combined with his deft political maneuvering kept public passions aroused for years. And then it says, appropriately, next to Adams' grave is that of the 5 victims of the Boston Massacre: Samuel Gray, Samuel Maverick, James Caldwell, Crispus Attucks, and Patrick Carr. Buried with them is Christopher Snyder, a young boy killed by a Tory in another incident 11 days earlier. So I'm assuming I don't know if that is the actual marker or not for the Boston. It'll either be this one, or it might be that one right over there. Here you would have the resting place for Sam Adams. And then here, would be the marker for the Boston Massacre, the remains of Samuel Gray, Samuel Maverick, James Caldwell, Crispus Attucks, Patrick Carr. Alright, and that is your tour of the Granary burial ground here in beautiful Boston, Massachusetts.